How political parties work, Unit 4. What does a political party need? They need committees, leadership, organization, workers, money, and candidates. Who does the work of a political party? The group that works in political parties is a committee, and the committee is headed by a chairperson. Committees exist at the national, state, and local levels. They're elected by party supporters. They work to identify potential candidates, and they articulate or talk about positions on key issues. The work of national committees. The national committees select the city and the date for the National Nominating Convention every 4 years when a president is elected. They draw up rules for how the convention functions. They choose the presidential and vice presidential candidates. They publish and distribute party literature. They arrange for campaign speakers, and they help presidential candidates plan, conduct, and raise money for the election campaign. The national committees don't actually run the presidential campaigns. The presidents have their own committees who do that, but they certainly advise the presidential committees on how to conduct the campaign. The work of the state and local committees is very similar to the work of the national committee in terms of its structure and its operation. Each state and local committee will have a chairperson. The state and local committees are really just as, if not more than, essential to the party's success because they're the ones who have direct contact with the voters. They recruit members and identify key issues. They help to unify the members and maintain harmony within the party among the various levels, local, state, and national, all communicating with each other. And if their party's candidate wins the presidential popular vote in the state, they select the people who will serve in the Electoral College and cast votes for their presidential candidate. Choosing candidates. Parties have to be careful to choose a candidate that appeals to voters, someone that will faithfully support the party positions on the issues, and someone who has enough popularity and enough money to win the state primary or caucus, because the overall goal of any political party is to get a candidate elected. So let's talk about money for just a minute. Running for political office is expensive. You have to rent office space for all the people that work within the party and work on the campaign. You have to pay certain people campaign workers' salaries. Some campaign workers are volunteers, but not all of them. And then you have to spend an enormous amount of money on media, putting together advertisements. You may run spots on television and radio. You may set up some sort of automatic, what they call robocalling telephone system, use the internet and social media. And then your candidate has to pay travel expenses for all the different places that he or she visits in the campaign and the speeches that are made and all the appearances. So where does the money come from? Well, private donations can be made by individuals and interest groups up to a certain dollar amount. Interest groups would include business groups, labor unions, political action committees, anybody that has an organization that has a vested interest in how an election turns out can donate money. Direct contributions are limited, and the donors' names have to be disclosed as part of the Federal Election Campaign Act so that there's a list of all the people who have donated directly to a particular candidate. However, there's also something called soft money donations, and these are donations that aren't made to specific people, not made to specific candidates, but they're made to political parties, and these are more difficult to track, which brings up the question of corruption. To what extent does a donation by someone influence or favors? So when people talk about political parties and money and campaigns and donations, this is really what they're thinking about. This issue brought about a period of campaign finance reform, and part of that movement is a shift toward public financing, where there's a government fund that actually pays some of the cost of running for president. And individual citizens can donate to this fund by just checking a box on your income tax returns each year. The candidate has to be running for the party's presidential nomination. The candidate has to have been able to raise at least $5,000 in private donations in each of at least 20 states. So there has to be some evidence to suggest that this candidate's for real and has a viable chance of winning office. If the candidate wins the nomination, then he or she can only use public funds for the general election. That's part of the price, I guess, of accepting public financing. And candidates from minor parties can qualify if the party won 5% of the popular vote in the election. Some candidates choose not to accept public funds and rely instead on just their own private fortunes, their own wealth, and private donations. Now, let's talk about some key vocabulary that goes along with the political party process and the voting. A precinct is a voting district. It's literally the area that you are assigned to for voting. A polling place is where one goes to vote. Turnout is the number of people who actually go and vote. A caucus is a meeting of party members. A primary is a preliminary election, and it sometimes is limited to only party members. Those laws vary state by state. A candidate is someone running for office. A slate is a list of one party's candidates for office. And you think about this when you hear somebody talk about voting a straight ticket. They're voting for a specific party's slate of candidates. So if you voted for all Republican candidates, you'd be voting the Republican slate or a straight ticket Republican. A platform is a party's position statement on the main issues in an election. The constituents are the people who are represented by elected officials. Partisan makes reference to an issue that appeals to voters of a particular party. Partisan literally means that you're partial, you're a supporter of a particular issue or party. Bipartisan would be a matter of concern or an issue that appeals to people in more than one party. They cross party lines. And nonpartisan are issues that have nothing to do with party allegiance. So these are the key vocabulary words, and this is the end of this video on how political parties work. Thanks for listening.